The morning sun filtered through the branches of Central Park's towering elms, dappling the ground with golden light. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers and freshly turned earth. Joggers passed by, headphones in, feet pounding the paths. Mothers strolled with children, laughter bubbling up around the playgrounds. New York City, with all its intensity and endless movement, felt almost serene here. Almost. Nick Langston, billionaire CEO of Langston Capital, moved through the park with a stiffness that suggested he didn't quite belong. His polished leather shoes crunched on gravel, a discordant sound amidst the soft shuffle of sneakers and the gentle rustling of leaves. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, he looked like he'd walked straight out of a boardroom rather than a leisurely stroll. This was his attempt at normalcy, though he wasn't sure he remembered what that was. For the past few months, Nick's life had felt like a treadmill set to maximum speed. His company's profits were at an all-time high, yet satisfaction eluded him. The empire he'd built with sheer determination now seemed like a gilded cage. The loneliness gnawed at him, an ache he couldn't fix with quarterly successes or luxury penthouses. He rubbed his temples, trying to dispel the weight behind his eyes. The merger with Dynacorp had gone through yesterday. He should have felt triumphant, but all he felt was hollow. Nick's steps slowed as he reached the edge of the park's pond. He took a deep breath, trying to absorb the calm. A family of ducks glided across the water, a mother leading her ducklings in a perfect line. For a fleeting moment he envied their simplicity, the effortless connection they seemed to share. Then, just as he was about to turn back, a small, insistent voice piped up beside him. "Hey, sir." He blinked, startled out of his thoughts. Looking down, he saw a little girl with curly brown hair tied into pigtails, her face tilted up to him. Her big hazel eyes sparkled with curiosity. She wore a bright yellow raincoat, though the sky was clear, and pink sneakers that were a little scuffed at the toes. Nick's brows furrowed. "Yes?" The girl didn't hesitate. "My mom has a picture of you in her wallet." The words hung in the air, incongruous and absurd. Nick's mind faltered, trying to process what she'd just said. His mouth opened, then closed again. "Excuse me?" he finally managed, a wry smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. The girl grinned, proud of her statement. "Yeah, a picture of you," she repeated, emphasizing the last word with a giggle. Nick chuckled, though it was a sound born of confusion more than amusement. "Are you sure? I don't think I know your mom." Before she could answer, a woman's voice called from a few feet away, tinged with panic. "Emily!" Nick looked up, and his breath caught in his throat. She was running toward them, a look of relief and exasperation on her face. Her dark auburn hair tumbled over her shoulders, catching the sunlight like polished mahogany. She wore jeans and a simple white blouse, but her elegance was undeniable. Her eyes, warm, deep brown eyes, widened as they met his. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other, as if trying to reconcile reality with what they were seeing. Emily pointed up at him. "Mom, it's him! The guy from your wallet!" The woman's face turned a shade darker, her cheeks flushing as she reached out and took Emily's hand. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice soft and a little breathless. "She has a habit of saying things." Her eyes darted away from his, focusing on her daughter, as if to avoid his reaction. Nick's heart pounded. He'd seen thousands of faces over the years, but hers tugged at something long buried. "It's fine," he said, his voice quieter than he intended. He glanced at Emily, her innocent curiosity still blazing. "I just didn't expect such an introduction." The woman laughed nervously. "Trust me, neither did I." There was a pause, the air between them charged with unspoken questions. "Nick," he offered, extending his hand. "Nick Langston." "I know," she replied with a hint of a smile. Her hand slipped into his, warm, delicate, but with a strength that surprised him. "It's Mia Thompson." The name sent a shiver through him, as if an old memory had just been brushed by a passing breeze. He searched his mind, fragments of past moments flickering like forgotten photographs. He looked at her again, really looked at her. There was something achingly familiar about the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, the way her lips tilted into a hesitant smile. But the memory stayed just out of reach. Mia cleared her throat, breaking the silence. "Well, thank you for not being completely terrified by my daughter," Emily beamed. "I'm not scary." "No, you're not," Nick agreed, his lips twitching into a real smile. "You're very brave, actually." Emily's chest puffed up with pride. "See, Mom?" Mia shook her head, amusement dancing in her eyes. "We should get going. We're on our way to her swimming lesson." "Right." Nick felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "It was nice meeting you, Emily. And you too, Mia." He turned, intending to walk away, to let them fade back into the stream of strangers who passed through his life, but something in him rebelled against that thought. "Wait," he said abruptly, spinning back. "Mia," she paused, her eyes wide with surprise. "Why do you have a picture of me in your wallet?" The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. Mia's expression froze, and for a moment she seemed to wrestle with herself. Then she smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Maybe one day. I'll tell you." She took Emily's hand and walked away, their figures growing smaller with each step. Nick stood rooted to the spot, the breeze lifting his hair, the faint scent of lilacs lingering in the air. His heart thudded in his chest, and a single thought reverberated through his mind. Who was she? And why did it feel like she held a missing piece of his life? Nick's eyes followed Mia and Emily as they walked away, their figures blurring into the bustling park crowd. Something inside him urged him to call out, to stop them, but his voice faltered. He didn't chase after people. He was the one being pursued, by investors, reporters, and business magnates who all wanted a piece of him. And yet, in that fleeting moment, the thought of simply letting Mia go gnawed at his gut. He sighed, turning back toward the cityscape looming beyond the trees. The skyscrapers glistened in the sunlight, symbols of power and ambition. His ambition. But today, they felt cold, lifeless. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a sharp reminder of the world he commanded. He slipped it out and glanced at the screen. Tara. Assistant. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the answer button before he pressed it. "Nick?" Tara's efficient tone cut through the line. "The board meeting starts in 20 minutes. Are you on your way?" "I'll be there," he replied, his voice devoid of warmth. He hung up and tucked the phone away. His feet felt like lead as he trudged back toward Fifth Avenue, the vibrant life of the park fading behind him. But with every step, the memory of Mia's eyes and that maddeningly cryptic smile lingered. Back in the glass fortress of Langston Capital, Nick paced his office. The skyline stretched before him, the city humming with energy, yet he felt strangely disconnected from it. The merger had been finalized, his company's valuation had skyrocketed, and yet his mind kept returning to Mia. Why did she have a picture of me in her wallet? The question gnawed at him, an itch he couldn't scratch. He didn't believe in coincidences. In his world, everything had a reason, a purpose. This woman, with her enigmatic smile and her daughter's startling announcement, had shaken the very foundation of his carefully constructed life. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Tara entered, her blonde hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, a tablet clutched to her chest. "The board is ready for you," Nick nodded, smoothing the lapels of his jacket. He walked past Tara, his mind elsewhere. The meeting room was a sleek, sterile space filled with polished mahogany and men in suits whose gazes screamed expectation. As he spoke, presenting projections and profit margins, he performed his role flawlessly. But beneath the practiced confidence, his mind wandered. The meeting adjourned with handshakes and congratulatory remarks, but as Nick stepped out into the hallway, his mask slipped. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. Before he could talk himself out of it, he tapped his security app and scrolled through the archived footage from the park's security cameras. It was a long shot, but Nick had built a life on calculated risks. The footage loaded, the timestamp ticking away. He fast-forwarded until he saw himself standing by the pond, then there she was, Mia, her auburn hair, the way she smiled down at Emily, the way she... He froze the frame, his breath caught in his throat. In the reflection of the pond, Mia's face turned slightly toward the camera, her eyes glimmering with something he couldn't place. But it wasn't her face that made his heart stop. It was the locket hanging around her neck. The small silver pendant, shaped like a crescent moon, gleamed softly against her skin. "I've seen that before." His chest tightened. Years ago, in another life, another version of himself, he'd given that very locket to someone he cared about deeply, someone he'd lost. He leaned back in his chair, his hands shaking slightly. Could it be? No, it's impossible. He had met someone once, years ago, at a college fundraiser, a woman with eyes that sparkled when she laughed, with a smile that made him believe in something beyond profits and losses. They'd spent a whirlwind month together, stolen moments amidst his rise in the corporate world, and then he'd let her go. His ambition had eclipsed everything, and he had walked away. Her name hadn't been Mia back then. The next morning, Nick found himself standing outside a modest brownstone in Brooklyn. The neighborhood was a far cry from the glass and steel towers of Manhattan, but something about it felt real. Children's bicycles leaned against iron fences, flower boxes bloomed with wild abandon, and the air smelled of fresh coffee and cinnamon. He hesitated, his heart pounding. What was he doing here? Before he could answer his own question, the door swung open. Mia stood there, her eyes widening in shock. "Nick?" Her voice was barely a whisper. He cleared his throat, trying to summon the confidence that usually came so easily. "I'm sorry. I know this is unexpected, but I need to talk to you." She glanced over her shoulder, then stepped onto the stoop, pulling the door closed behind her. "What are you doing here?" Her tone was guarded, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something else. Hope, maybe. He took a deep breath. "I saw the locket." Her hand flew to her neck instinctively, fingers brushing the crescent moon pendant. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice low. Mia looked away, her jaw tightening. "You don't remember, do you?" "I remember giving it to someone I cared about, but her name wasn't Mia." She laughed softly, a bitter edge to the sound. "No, it wasn't. Back then I was Amelia." The name hit him like a punch to the gut. Amelia. His Amelia. The woman he had let slip away, thinking there would always be time to chase after more important things. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of unsaid words. "Mia," he whispered, "why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Because you made your choice, Nick. You walked away. I wasn't going to chase you." His chest tightened. "And Emily?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, she's your daughter." The world tilted on its axis. His breath caught, his vision blurred. His daughter. The little girl with the bright hazel eyes and the mischievous grin. Everything he'd ever wanted, everything he'd convinced himself he didn't need, was right here, in front of him. "Mia, I didn't know." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "What would you have done if you did?" "I don't know," he admitted, his voice breaking. "But I know what I want now." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. "And what's that?" she whispered. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers. "You, Emily, a chance to make this right." She swallowed hard, the vulnerability in her eyes cutting through him. "It won't be easy, Nick. I don't care." For the first time in years, he felt like he was standing on solid ground. He had no boardroom strategy, no calculated plan, just hope. "Give me a chance," he pleaded. "Please." Mia's lips trembled, and for a long, heart-stopping moment, she didn't answer. Then she nodded, just once. "Okay." Nick stood on the steps of Mia's brownstone, his heart still pounding from her whispered "okay." The single word held more weight than any business deal he'd ever brokered. He had a chance, a real chance, to reclaim something he'd lost, to build something beyond numbers and contracts. But doubt crept in. Could he do this? Could he be the father Emily needed, the partner Mia deserved? "Nick." Mia's voice drew him back. He blinked, focusing on her worried expression. Emily's laughter rang from inside the house, a sound so pure it tugged at his heart. "Do you want to come in?" Mia asked softly, her fingers twisting together. He could see the hesitation in her eyes, the vulnerability she rarely let show. He nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." She led him inside, the door clicking shut behind them. The warmth of the home wrapped around him, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile spaces he was used to. The scent of vanilla and fresh laundry filled the air. Sunlight spilled through the windows, casting golden patches on the wooden floor. Toys were scattered across the living room, a small dollhouse sitting proudly in the corner. Emily was sprawled on a rug, coloring furiously with a rainbow of crayons. She looked up as they entered, her face lighting up. "Hi, Mr. Nick." The title made him wince. He wanted to be more than Mr. Nick to her. "Hey, Emily," he said, crouching to her level. "What are you drawing?" She held up the paper, revealing a crayon masterpiece of a tall man, a woman, and a little girl holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "This is me, Mommy, and you," she declared proudly. Nick's throat tightened. He glanced at Mia, who was watching them with guarded eyes. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice thick. "I'd love to keep it, if that's okay." Emily nodded eagerly. "You can have it." He took the drawing carefully, as if it were the most valuable thing in the world. Maybe it was. Mia cleared her throat. "Emily, why don't you go wash your hands for lunch?" "Okay, Mommy." Emily scampered off, leaving Nick and Mia alone in the cozy living room. The silence between them was heavy, charged with unspoken questions and lingering doubts. Nick stood, sliding the drawing into his jacket pocket. "I want to be part of her life, Mia," he said, his voice low. "If you'll let me." Mia crossed her arms, her eyes searching his face. "This isn't just about showing up once or twice, Nick. Emily needs stability, consistency." "I know," he said, meeting her gaze. "I'm not going to walk away this time." She sighed, looking away. "It's not just about Emily, it's about us too." He stepped closer, his fingers brushing hers. "I want to make things right. With you. With her. I know I messed up before, but I've changed. Or at least, I want to." Her eyes softened, the walls around her heart cracking just a little. "I want to believe you. Then let me prove it." Before she could respond, Emily burst back into the room, her face lit with excitement. "Can Mr. Nick stay for lunch, Mommy?" Mia hesitated, then smiled. "Sure, sweetheart." Lunch was a simple affair, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, but it was more satisfying than any gourmet meal Nick had ever tasted. He watched Mia as she moved around the kitchen, her movements graceful and practiced. He watched Emily chatter about her swimming lessons, her favorite cartoons, and the friends she'd made at school. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of belonging. A quiet joy settled in his chest, fragile and precious. After lunch, they moved to the living room. Emily curled up with a picture book, leaving Nick and Mia to talk quietly. "So what happens now?" Mia asked, her voice careful. "I want to spend more time with both of you," he said. "I want to get to know Emily, and I want her to know me." Mia nodded slowly. "Okay, but take it slow. She needs time to adjust." "I understand." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the city filtering in through the open window. Then Nick's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was Tara again. He hesitated, then answered. "Yes?" "Nick, we have a problem." Tara's voice was clipped, urgent. "The Dynacorp merger. There's been a breach. Sensitive information is leaking to the press. The board is demanding an emergency meeting." His jaw clenched. The merger was his crowning achievement, the culmination of months of work. If it fell apart, it could mean financial ruin, not just for him, but for his entire company. He glanced at Mia, who was watching him with a mix of concern and resignation. "I have to go," he said, his voice tight. Her eyes flickered with disappointment, but she nodded. "Of course." He turned to Emily, who was absorbed in her book. "Emily, I have to head out, but I'll be back soon, I promise." She looked up, her eyes clouding with confusion. "Okay, Mr. Nick." The title stung, a reminder of how tenuous his place in her life was. He looked at Mia one last time, searching for reassurance. "I'll make this right." "I hope you do," she said softly. The emergency meeting was chaos. Board members shouted, accusations flew, and the weight of the situation pressed down on Nick's shoulders. He tried to focus, to steer the ship back on course, but his mind kept drifting to Mia and Emily. After hours of damage control, the boardroom finally emptied, leaving Nick drained and hollow. He sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. The breach had been contained, for now, but the damage was done. His reputation had taken a hit, and the fallout was far from over. His phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. Frowning, he answered. "Hello?" A cold, distorted voice crackled through the line. "You should have stayed focused on the merger, Mr. Langston. Your little distraction will cost you." The call went dead. Nick's blood ran cold. Distraction. His heart pounded as he dialed Mia's number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. He grabbed his coat and ran for the door, panic clawing at his chest. When he arrived at Mia's brownstone, his worst fears were realized. The front door hung open, a splintered crack running through the frame. Inside, the living room was in disarray. Cushions overturned, Emily's crayons scattered across the floor. "Mia!" he called out, his voice breaking. "Emily?" Silence. He stumbled further inside, his breath coming in ragged gasps. A piece of paper lay on the coffee table. His hands shook as he picked it up. Stay away from the merger, or you'll lose more than your company. A wave of nausea crashed over him. He clutched the note, his mind reeling. Mia and Emily were gone, and it was his fault. Nick's hands shook as he clutched the ransom note. The words blurred, his mind racing with panic and fury. He forced himself to breathe, to think. Whoever had taken Mia and Emily knew how to hit him where it hurt. They weren't after just money. They wanted to destroy everything he held dear. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a cruel sound that shattered the silence of the empty house. He snatched it up, his voice hoarse. "Where are they?" he demanded. "Ah, so predictable, Mr. Langston," the same distorted voice sneered. "You've been so focused on your little family reunion that you forgot how the game is played. Now you're paying the price." "Tell me what you want," Nick growled, his nails biting into his palm. The voice chuckled coldly. "It's simple. Call off the merger. Announce to the board that the deal is dead, and your family will be returned unharmed. Refuse and you'll never see them again." The line went dead. Nick's heart pounded painfully in his chest. He sank to his knees, the weight of the decision crushing him. The merger was his life's work, the culmination of years of relentless ambition. But Mia and Emily, they were everything he hadn't known he needed. For the first time in years, the choice was crystal clear. He dialed Tara, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. "Get the board together, the merger is off." Tara's sharp intake of breath crackled over the line. "Nick, are you sure? This could—" "I don't care," he cut her off. "Cancel it." He hung up, his jaw set. The empire he'd built would crumble, but he didn't care. He would tear it all down if it meant getting them back. But cancelling the merger wasn't enough. He needed to find Mia and Emily before it was too late. An hour later, Nick stood in his office, staring at a map of New York spread across his desk. His security team hovered nearby, their faces grim. "We traced the call," Mark, his head of security, said. "It came from a warehouse in Red Hook. We're ready to move in, but we need to be careful. They're professionals. If they sense we're closing in, they won't hesitate." Nick's jaw tightened. "Then we won't give them the chance." He slipped a gun into the holster beneath his jacket, the cold metal a sobering reminder of what was at stake. He wasn't a violent man, but today he was willing to do whatever it took. As they drove through the darkening streets of Brooklyn, Nick's mind was a whirl of fear and determination. Images of Mia and Emily flashed before his eyes, Mia's hesitant smile, Emily's gap-toothed grin. He couldn't lose them. Not now. Not ever. The SUV screeched to a halt outside the warehouse district. The air smelled of salt and rust, the distant lights of Manhattan glittering like a mirage. "Stay close," Mark whispered. "We'll get them out." Nick nodded, his throat tight. They moved silently, shadows in the darkness. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking structure of metal and broken windows. A faint light glowed from within. Nick's heart pounded as they approached the door. He signaled to Mark, who nodded back. In one swift motion, they burst inside. The scene that met his eyes was seared into his memory. Mia was tied to a chair, her face pale and streaked with tears. Emily sat beside her, clutching her mother's hand, her eyes wide with terror. A man in a dark suit stood over them, a gun gleaming in his hand. The man turned, his eyes narrowing. "You shouldn't have come, Langston." Nick's vision blurred with rage. "Let them go." The man smirked. "Not until you—" A shot rang out, deafening in the cavernous space. The man crumpled, his gun clattering to the floor. Nick rushed forward, pulling Mia and Emily into his arms. Mia's sobs racked her body as she clung to him. "You came," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'll always come for you," he choked out, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Emily buried her face in his chest. "I was scared, Mr. Nick." He held her tightly. "You don't have to be scared anymore." Mark's team swept the warehouse, securing the area. Sirens wailed in the distance, a promise that this nightmare was finally over. Back at Mia's brownstone, the silence was filled with fragile relief. The police had taken their statements, the remnants of fear slowly giving way to exhausted calm. Mia sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Emily slept in Nick's lap, her tiny fingers curled around his tie. Nick met Mia's eyes, his voice raw. "I'm so sorry. I should have protected you." She shook her head. "You did. You came for us." He swallowed hard. "I called off the merger. Everything I built, it's gone." Mia reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek. "You didn't lose everything, Nick." He looked down at Emily, her chest rising and falling softly. A warmth filled him, spreading to the cold, empty corners of his heart. "No," he whispered. "I didn't." Mia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I've spent so long trying to protect myself from getting hurt again. But tonight, you showed me that maybe it's okay to trust you." He leaned in, their foreheads touching. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I want to be here, with you and Emily. I want to build something real." Her lips curved into a soft smile. "You already are." He kissed her gently, the world narrowing to the two of them. It wasn't a grand gesture or a dramatic declaration, just a simple, quiet promise. When they pulled back, Nick looked at the sleeping girl in his arms. "I want her to know who I really am." Mia nodded, her eyes warm. "Then stay, show her." Nick leaned back, his heart finally at peace. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, he welcomed it. He wasn't alone anymore.